evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Hello. 夢が叶うまで人生のページをシェアつける正夢シェリーです。Bookmarking life's page until my dreams come true. I'm Shiori Masayume. はい、今日も頑張れ。イエイ。Do let me know if the volume is soft or loud. I have not done an ASMR in a very long time. So I will start saying hello. Hello Shun. Hello Ruby Nox Zia. Hello Haru. Hello Dank Tofu. Hello Ranshad. Good evening. Hai, konbanwa. Selamat senja. Selamat senja. Tonight I'll be reading a book to everybody. It's one of Genshin Impact's lore, their stories. Hello Tomohiko, welcome. Oh, you're sleepy already, Haru. It's okay. You can go to sleep. You can watch this on archive. It is definitely alright. So tonight we will be reading Moonlit Bamboo Forest. There are 4 volumes to this story, so I hope that everybody enjoys the story, and if you fall asleep, it's fine. Lower the BGM. Okay. So if you fall asleep, it's fine. It's supposed to be read for you to fall asleep, but if you just wanna know about one of the stories of Genshin Impact and most of their folklores, you can just leave this in the background. Okay, so I'll start. Between the rustling emerald curtains of foliage, in a spot where the croaks of frogs and shrills of cicadas meet, lies a corner of the forest that is withered and dry. Just near the wetlands, beneath the mountain crags, the bamboo forest of Mount Jingse is the verdant home to many fables. After a spell of rain, a cadence of drips and drops could be heard bouncing from the bamboo leaves and hollow bamboo stalks. Along a winding path between the bamboo spires came a young boy. He swiftly made his way along the trail, climbing up the damp crags and running down its paved mossy course. The leaves of tangled foliage and vines strewn across his path brushed against his skin. The boy finally decided to stop for a rest at a dried and withering spot among the creaking bamboo of Mount Jingse, tucked away below the mountain rock. The boy clearly remembered the village elder once saying that the rainy season was a proper time for the fox to take its wife. Only the eyes of a child could ever see the fox, bride's crimson sedan chair, and its procession dancing through the forest accompanied by strains of music and thumping drums. The village elder also warned the kids mustn't approach any such procession. If you wander too close, the fox will snatch your soul away. That's what the village elder always said. What happens if your soul gets snatched? Asked one of the kids. Once the fox has your soul, Your fate will be forever sealed. Perhaps they will use you for music in their processions, smashing you like a cymbal and beating you like a drum, horns blaring all around. There will be no rest for your soul. The elder would never forget to pose as if she were beating a drum while she spoke, scaring the little ones all the more. As the boy grew older, he stopped believing the elder's silly fables. Following the sealy's wispy trails, he passed through the green labyrinth, accompanied by the faint calls of foxes coming from the thickets along the way. Those crafty creatures hiding deep in the forest will seldom reveal themselves, or their boisterous bridal processions to careless treading travelers. The boy was in rather low spirits, kicking pebbles off the road and stomping up naturally occurring stone steps along the way, wandering further into the heart of the bamboo forest. The village elder once said that this very forest was once an ancient kingdom conquered by the Geo-Archon. But what did the Geo-Archon look like? Did it have arms and legs or eyes like us? Or was he more like the stone beasts found along the water banks? The herb gatherers that periodically set up shop in the city to sell their herbal ingredients would always bring tales of that year's rite of descension. Listening to their stories, one could only imagine the amazing scene of the Geo-Archon descending to the world. But of course, the curious kids could only hope to someday see the great Archon that had been revered for generations with their very own eyes. It was the immovable Mount Qingse, a gift from the benevolent Geo-Archon, and what the decades of peace and the long lives that had been enjoyed by generations of people here preordained by the Archon. The answers to these questions lay outside the village, within the aging forest of the mountain. Bubbling with questions and expectation, the determined boy made his way forward beneath the scattered shadows of the bamboo leaves. Volume 2. Lost among the green bamboo canopy, the young lad soon met an unexpected companion. "What's the matter? Are you lost?" The lad heard a gentle voice among the rustling bamboo stalks, speaking with a hint of sarcastic playfulness. The lad turned to see a slender woman garbed in white. Soon, she stood beside a clear babbling brook, with beads of water glistening on her woven rush raincoat, her golden eyes melding with ray cast through the forest by the setting sun. The village elder had said that there were once white horses that would leap from clear springs to become adepti, to assist the campaigns of the Lord of Geo. But no one had ever specified which spring, or the honorable name of the illuminated beast that sprang from it. Besides, the woman that stood before him now didn't appear to be an adeptus, apart from the piercing gaze of her golden eyes. Furthermore, he had never heard of any adepti that needed to wear raincoats. "Well, if it isn't another fool," The lady garbed in white began to chuckle, squinting her eyes with a smile. "Who are you calling a fool?" replied the young lad in a fluster. This was certainly no adeptus. Who had ever heard of an adeptus that would speak in such a deplorable manner? "I wish to embark on an adventure. I want to sail across the seas and witness the stone of spears of the Lord of Geo for myself." "You've only just embarked on your journey, and yet you've already fallen astray among the bamboo forest." The woman's reply was calm, and even a subtle smirk playing over her eyes. Already the lad found her particularly annoying. "I don't need your... There's no shame in being lost. Come, follow me. I will lead out of here." The woman snickered and extended her slender hand towards the boy. Her white skin glimmered under the rays of sunset that shone between the bamboo leaves. Thank you." The young lad took her outstretched hand. Her skin was cold and damp to the touch, much like fresh rain upon a mountain or dewdrops upon a bamboo shoot. The setting sun gradually disappeared behind the mountain ridge, and the afterglow in the clear sky above gradually grew dim. The village elder always used to say that once the warm glow of the setting sun fades, the cold and murky atmosphere of the mountain woods becomes a perfect breeding ground for monsters. These monsters are born from a past that has long gone. Their spirits forming from the resentment and unwillingness of the dead. Any bamboo they ensnare will dry up and dry, and any person that they ensnare will similarly grow weary and fade from existence. Sometimes they will even call upon passers-by to assist them with matters that they could not accomplish on their own, before leading them into a trap which they would never return. Other times, they would act as a guide for innocent travelers, leading them into a den of demons. So you see, little ones, you must stay vigilant and never let your guard down. When you journey far from familiar soil, thus would say the village elder, patting the kids on their heads as she finished the story. Come to think of it, could this woman in white be a monster in the mountain woods? The lad grew nervous in his heart and couldn't help but slow his pace. What's the matter? The woman turned around, her golden eyes shining through the moonlight, draping over her silhouette. Volume 3. Nightfall seemed to always hasten its approach over the bamboo forest of Mount Jingse. Gazing upward, the silvery moonlight was scattered amidst the shadows of the bamboo forest leaves. In a spot illuminated under the moonlight, far from the croaking frogs and chirping cicadas, new bamboo culms had just sprouted from the ground. The bamboo forest of Mount Jingse is the verdant home to many fables. As night fell, the woman garbed in white began to recount many stories to the young lad, ancient tales that the lad had never heard before. Long ago, 3 bright moons once hung high in the night sky. These 3 moons were sisters, their years numbering more than those of the Geo-Archon, and their year of birth crediting the very bedrock upon upon which Lee Harbour now rests. The moons were daughters of prose and song, sovereign over the night sky. They navigated the heavens above in their silver carriage, alternating with one another twice a month. If the rain was not promptly passed from one sister to the next, a terrible disaster would occur the very next day. These 3 luminous moons shared but one love, the stars of daybreak. Only at fleeting moments when day and night converged could one see the 3 sisters pass the fading stars and gaze upon the chambers of the morning stars. Moments later, as the new dawn would break over the horizon, the carriage would quickly ferry the night sister away. The 3 sisters shared an equal affection for their one and only love, much like the affection they shared for one another. But this was all before the world was smashed against the tides of great calamity. With time, disasters overturned the sovereign carriage and laid ruin to the halls of the stars. The 3 sisters of the night turned against one another, leading to their eternal parting by death. Only one of their pale corpses now remains, ever shedding its cold light. The woman raised her head and gazed at the moon through the sea of bamboo. Her long, slender neck was covered in the silver light, and her eyes shone gold. The wolf packs are children of the moons. They remember the calamities and tragedies that ensued. Hence, they lament the fate of their mother with each new moon. It is also why those who live among the wolves call the morning stars the surviving love of the moon, the grievous stars. I see. The young lad remained silent for some time. This was a story that the village elders had never told before. Perhaps it was a legend that even the eldest of elders had never heard before. It was a grander tale than those about foxes seeking brides and monsters ensnaring people, but a less riveting one than those about the Lord of Geo driving away evil spirits. The woman's tales were almost like a dream of imagination. These are stories that have never been told, legends that have already been long forgotten by the people. The woman garbed in white gently stroked the lad's hair and lowered her eyelids. The golden color of her eyes grew a little darker. Before the ancient immortals established the universe, there were gods that wandered across the lands. It was at this time that many of the adepti came into being. But what about before then? Only broken memories and fragments of the past were turned into stories, and stories turned into legends passed among the people. Even deities and adepti would feel sentimental upon hearing such ancient memories that surpassed the mortal world. The woman let out a long sigh and turned to find a young lad fast asleep. Unbelievable. With a weary smile, she took off her raincoat and placed it over the young lad. That night, the lad dreamt of 3 moons in the sky, and a silver carriage stopped before the gates of the stars. Volume 4. As day slowly dawned, the young boy was gently awakened. Daybreak's light silhouetted the white mist that shrouded the bamboo forest, of which tales of ghostly foxes were told. The vapor seemed like horsetail as it billowed this way and that. The woman held his hand, and together they walked toward the place where the sun pierced through the woods. They turned left, then right, passing through the undergrowth, teeming with insects clambering over slippery moss-covered stones, scaling down the gorge hidden by shadows of the bamboo trees. All the way she led him till they arrived at the exit of the bamboo forest. "I still don't know who you are or where you're from," said the boy. For the previous night's story had yet to leave his mind. The woman turned, and with her back to the morning light, her eyes shone gold, but she merely smiled and said nothing. Many years later, the boy, who was a boy no longer, would remember the moment he would understand. The gap between them was a yawning chasm. His fate was to leave his home and go to Liu Harbor to seek the riches of the Geo Archon had bestowed upon him. Hers, then, was to hide herself away from the majestic, kindly gaze of that great Lord of Geo, and protect those ancient tales that even she was beginning to forget. So the boy and the white-clad, golden-eyed woman were parted. He would pack his things and head for the thriving port city, while she stood silently at boundaries of the bamboo forest, for in her bewitching eyes she seemed to have already foreseen the young man's fate, that someday he was old, tired of the sea and the waves of life, he would slowly return to this mountain village, and there he would live out the rest of his days. In the dawn's glow, the boy heard a whinnying cry that grew distant. He turned and looked, and there was nothing behind him but a single strand of hair that had come to rest on his shoulder. And so that was Moonlit Bamboo Forest. Hello, Wings of Piano. Hello, Very Note Player. Hello, Cappuccino. Good evening. I think we have time to read one more story. What story shall we read? Since it's still Chinese New Year, I would like to read a Li Yue story. Just can't find a suitable one. Okay. The next story is Legend of the Lone Sword. Before that, let me drink water. Alright. Volume 1. A single sword's light pierced the night air, unchallenged by any star or moon. The autumn wind in the mountains wept aloud, following the whirling dance of the lonesome blade. Driving wind and falling rain accompanied a single traveler on his journey home. This person's hair was wild and his face fierce, and he seemed most fey indeed. His clothes were thin, and he swayed this way and that in the center of the homeward path like one sick or hurt to the quick, seeming more like gold than a living man. He had been on the path 3 days. 3 days he had gone hungry and without any sleep. 3 days ago, he had a name and a famed sword and his fallen martial arts school. But now, he only wore sorrow and worry on his brow, which rolled off him, carried by the sudden rain and onto the mud below, eroding the soil. 3 days ago, that nameless swordsman had started a feud with him, a feud that saw his master and junior buried in the merciless mountain snow as the screaming snow was stained red. Today, he had a new name. Jin, the 72nd, for he was the last of the 72 members of their school. He did not know how long he had walked before he heard the sound of carts behind him. Jin, the 72nd, shuffled to the side of the road and stopped, asking, "Is your cart headed for Tupi village?" The cart driver saluted and replied, "Few of the carts on this road do not do so." Jin, the 72nd, then asked, "Then pray, will your cart bear another man?" The cart driver said, "It could, but you did not ask if I would." Jin, the 72nd, did not understand. "If you travel to Tupi village, why would you not take me?" "For you are not I, nor are you," the driver replied. What a waste of words, and no sooner had that been said than the blade left its sheath. The cart driver felt but a single chilling cold and fell from his cart to the floor without a struggle, never to speak again. Jin, the 72nd, was such a person. Though he had just lost everything, even his heart and his bold brashness had ebbed. He had always hated pointlessly talkative people most of all. Riding the blood-stained cart, Jin, the 72nd, departed for Tupi village. Volume 2. They say that the faraway land, Tupi, meant to burn away vanity's dross to attain the gem of truth. Tupi village lay at the foot of a barren mountain, possible to the outside world only by a single ancient path, the very same that lay beneath Jin, the 72nd's feet. The skies were darkening, and the wind and rain howled. Jin, the 72nd, had never had anything to do with Tupi village but for his vengeance, and so he now sought out its village chief. By the time the ox cart had finally trudged its way through the muddy old road to the mountain's base, night fell upon the land, and gloomy clouds cast a boundless shadow as they covered the moon's eyes. Jin, the 72nd, hid in that shade, drinking the night in, body and soul. In that deep night, the pure white light of the moon shone upon the head of the village chief. Tupi village had never been large, but the chief was no ordinary character. No one knew his name or his past, and no one dared ask. They only knew that his shoulders bore a great blood debt from a past as crimson as his eyes. For red they were and sharp like a blade, piercing the hearts of all he gazed upon as he pleased. His character was much the same, like a sharp knife that might pierce another person's heart at any time without forewarning. It's time. The chief shook his head as he talked to himself, the cold moonlight dancing over his shaven crown. Outside, a ravenous demon wielded a bloodletting long sword, massacring his followers one after the other. Though Tupi village was full of evil people, schools and sects had their rules, and so none would dare come knocking with rash provocations and talk of revenge. But Jin the 72nd had no school or sect. He was thus unbound by any such rules. He was but a single starving ghost with a lone sharp blade, yearning to taste the blood of his enemies. The winds and rain accompanied the din of battle, and the downpour washed away the crimson that stained the swordsman, only for another layer to be painted on immediately. The crimson swordsman strode forward amid a crimson mist. Many were his wounds, but none could stay in his hand. When that mist had last cleared in the endless deluge, the swordsman crossed the turbid red beneath his feet and stalked towards the chief's mansion. The din beyond the gates quieted, and only now the chief raised a cup of wine and scattered the alcohol into the thin air with a flick. Perhaps a toast, the fated meeting to come, or a ritual for his sullied soul. The doors opened. It was Jin the 72nd, his reddened outline juxtaposed against the blinding grey elements outside. I have questions for you, village chief. You've taken quite a few of my men's lives. Exactly 362, no more, no less. The chief spoke not, and his face remained still, but the pulsing vein in his temple betrayed the fire within. Ah, yes, and one dog. So saying, the crimson silhouette tossed a certain object forward. It clattered atop the wine case, and it was the bone of the dog that guarded the door. It had been stewed for a time and was picked clean almost to the marrow. For in this half an hour, not only had Jin the 72nd snuffed out the lives of 362 able men, but he had even turned the dog keeping the gate into dog meat stew. What cruelty! What ruthlessness! The village chief let out a terrible scream. Standing, he drew his sword. Volume 3. The rain had ceased, but light had yet to recoup the skies. Jin the 72nd had obtained news of his nemesis from the mouth of the village chief. Now, not a thing was left in Tupi village but masterless rooms and masterless spirits. And not even that remained, for this was a world without spirits. This world possessed no elemental power, and so the memories of the dead could not remain in the mortal realm via elemental resonance. The village chief was a formidable foe. His blade was swift as could be, and he had left many swords on Jin the 72nd, each deep enough to cut bone. But alas, his heart was far too slow. For this was a world without elements, and thus swordsmanship could not be imbued with them. Swordsmanship was thus a question of pure physical skill and not elemental control. The sword is an extension of one's body, and one uses it as an arm would command the fingers, or as one's heart directs the eyes. Though he was skilled indeed in the art of swift blade, the village chief never understood the value of the heart, and so he fell to a single stroke. Jin the 72nd strode towards the fallen chief, discarding the broken incense burner in his left hand. For the chief had focused too narrowly on pouring savage strokes upon the swordsman's body, thinking him too harried to fight back, and had no eyes for his enemy's left hand, which should have been empty. And in a flash, the incense burner had struck the chief of Tupi village on the head, sending him tumbling into a wall where he collapsed immobile. Underhanded villain. But only the wind answered him. The villain gripping the bloodied censer did not say a word. The person you're looking for is in the barren mountains beyond this village. Go seek your death there. But the villain had departed, and all that remained to answer him was the rustling of the wind and the crackling of wind flames. Volume 4. Jin the 72nd waited till the rainbow had dispersed before setting off once from Tupi village towards the barren mountains. Ancient legend held that these barren mountains had been brought into being by slices from the celestial emperor's blade, and thus were incredibly hard to scale. Folk tales also had that they were called barren, for they had soaked up the tears of the Earth Mother, and thus had become bitterly salty lands where nothing grew. The barren mountains had once been mined for gold and gems, but the mines had all been ruined in an earthquake, their workers buried within. No one tried ever again to create the facilities to mine the mountain's bounty, and its caverns were infested with wicked beasts and bandits. And among these evils hidden in the mountains was Jin the 72nd's nemesis. The swordsman's shoulders shivered, and his gait hesitated, for the wounds he had been given in the battle against the chief of Tupi village hindered him still. He knew that many pairs of eyes stared out at him from between the withered rocks, and the breath of beasts who had caught the scent of his blood was all around. Long years of bloodshed had honed Jin the 72nd's senses to their limit. He sensed the lifeless mountains were in fact a giant death trap. Bandits and villains lay in wait for him to enter some narrow grotto, or squeeze into a tiny gorge, or pass by a collapsed mine shaft. Then they would set up upon him in the darkness with knives and finish him. But from the looks of things now, the steep mountains now looked like they might be enough to kill Jin the 72nd. The swordsman limped with every step he took, and the road was small and treacherous. Every so often gravel would slip loose beneath his feet. At the same time, upon the cliff twisted about with sinuous dead trees. Two figures squinted as they observed the tiny wanderer. He had been much worse for wear since he departed from the mountain's base. If we but leave him to the treacherous track, he will surely fall into the abyss below. So said a bone-thin old crone. She glanced to the side, icy death in her jade blue eyes, sharp as viper hidden in a rocky cleft. Not so. She turned to face the booming voice of a corpulent old man. He slew 362 at the Tupi village, and even cooked the dog at the gate for stew. Though he may have been badly wounded by the village chief to the point where he can barely move, we should still beware of him. The whole woman vanished into the withered forest with a displeased noise. The old man watched a while longer as the lame swordsman stopped for a moment more before patting his large belly and slowly departing. Not a single withered tree or blade of dying grass was touched as he did. Then suddenly, the sky turned dark with gathering storm clouds, and modern rain again began to fall lightly. In the mountain rain, the wounded Jin the 72nd leaned on his sword like a crutch and struggled forward. But the chilling cold and the loss of blood was too much for him to bear, and he fell upon the gravel and barren stone. Just as the darkness took him, he caught a glimpse of the billowing hem of azure blue skirts. He could have sworn he'd seen that sight before. The end. So, how did everybody enjoy the two stories that were read? Or have you all fallen asleep? I don't know. The two stories were I'm sorry, I forgot. Moonlit Bamboo Forest and The Legend of the Loon Sword. Unfortunately, that was the end. And this is a completed version collected. I will only read completed stories that were compiled. So I think it's safe to remind that most of Li's stories are ended with a not very happy ending. So, yep. That's it. I don't think there is enough time for me to read another. Is there enough time for me to read another story? Is everybody asleep? Let's read the Teyvat travel guide. Because all of us who play Genshin Impact are travelers, and we need to understand the world of Teyvat. So this is written by Alice, which is Klee's mother. Volume 1, Mondstadt Chapter. Teyvat Geographic Special Edition, Alice Mondstadt Diaries. Tada Upagorj. The 3 hilichurl tribes located in this valley are all densely populated. But what if we built a huge spin? Hello? Is the stream? Okay, the stream is back online. I was momentarily disconnected, but now I'm back. Tada Upagorj. The 3 hilichurl tribes located in this valley are all densely populated. What if we built a huge spinning, ball-shaped cell in the center of the valley and threw all of the hilichurls into it? That way, we might be able to generate enough energy to power all the mills in Mondstadt for at least 5 years. If we took it one step further by grinding the hilichurls that are too old or too weak into food and feeding them to the strong ones, we might just build ourselves a perpetual motion machine that can support a huge factory like Saya. It seems totally feasible to me. But when I told Miss Lisa about this idea, she just looked at me and pondered in silence for a long time, then changed the subject gracefully. Star Snatch Cliff. The animal icon is a bit too undisciplined for me. If I were a god, I would not have allowed my realm to look so unorganized and ragged. With enough bombs placed in proper positions, even huge cliffs like Star Snatch would crumble into dust in a second. With flatter terrain, Mondstadt would surely look much nicer. But that uncouth cavalry captain rejected my proposal instantly. He even asked me to stay away from Star Snatch Cliff. Windrise. At the center is a huge oak tree. It is said that Vanessa ascended there. I searched around the tree for a long time, but did not find any launching device. I grabbed some hilichurls nearby to put my theory to the test. Sadly, the longest flying distance was from here to the hunter's hut around Springvale. How disappointing. Falcon Coast. My unsuccessful experiment that caused quite a stir in Springvale. So Miss Jean from the Knights of Favonius arranged someone to keep tabs on me. All I could do all day was wander around Falcon Coast. This is such a boring place. Those stupid eagles hovering in the sky and puffed up animal slimes all bored me to death. The worst of all was that I had nothing to do. On the other hand, the outrider girl who was sent to monitor me had quite a lot of fun with the kids. Whispering Woods. Yet another forest in Mondstadt. This outrider named Amber seemed to know her way around this place. The explosive toy she carried around caught my attention. With some tweaks, I could turn it into something that could blow this entire forest and even nearly mountains into smithereens easily. My proposal seemed to scare her, but an explosive stuffed toy is indeed a brilliant idea. I must try this out sometime. Bright Crown Canyon. I finally got rid of that stalker from Knights of Favonius. This valley I found at the northeast coast of Cider Lake is still guarded by ancient mechanisms, but the soldiers responsible for holding the pass for the King of Gales were nowhere to be found now. All the winds of time had left behind the unintelligent hilichurls and silent mechanical guards. My attempt to control ruin guards with hilichurls failed as well. The guards split into pieces, and as the fate for the hilichurls strapped onto it. I will spare you the gory details. Half of the ruins were also destroyed in the process. Storm Terror's Lair. Bright Crown Canyon leads to this huge ruin of an ancient city, which was built by the cruel King of Gales, the Caribbean. The city was built in a ring shape. It seems that every resident of the city had been arranged their own spot between the inner and outer rings. Right in the center of the city was the tall tower where the King of Gales resided. The ruins of the domain of this cruel king, who once tried to control his people's lives, are now utterly deserted. I blew up a few arcades so people can climb up the tower more easily. Looks quite good to me. The ruin feels more ancient now. Volume 2, Liyue Chapter. Tevat Geographic Special Edition, Alice's Travels in Liyue. Dihua Marsh. The northern stretch of the Bishui River turns into a wetland. If you look south beyond the stone gate, you will see silver grass marsh as far as the eye can see. At the southernmost point of the marsh is an inn perched atop a giant rock. That is the Wangshu Inn, the highest point on the entire marsh. Look south from there and you will see Guili Plains. You can also make out Guyun Stone Forest across the sea. Also, there's a weirdo staying at the inn on the top floor. I don't think I've ever heard him say a single word. Lunch is a true feast at the Wangshu Inn. The kitchen is equipped with every utensil you could imagine. Perfect for getting some practical alchemy practice. On the topic of alchemy practice, I've got a few new things to test in my search for an explosion catalyst. If everything goes smoothly, I'll spend a few more days here and then head to the Guili Plains. Guili Plains. In the end, I came to Guili Plains a few days earlier than I'd originally planned. Records suggest that prior to the Archon War, this area was a thriving marketplace. The foxes and wild finches are stunning here, with fur and feathers that have a certain glow about them. But I hear that they can be pests too. Liyue locals complain that they keep eating their food offerings to the Geo Archon. I wonder if that gives them a fruity aroma when roasted. Maybe I should go hunting. They run a strict operation at the checkpoint on the main road, but the guards who work there are friendly people. I made a potion from some local herbs and gave it to one of them for his stutter. It cured him, but it did have some minor side effects. He now can't help but constantly imitate everyone he comes across. Not just what they say, but the way they say it. It's uncanny how spot on his impressions are. Juyun cursed. If I'm told that somewhere amidst the misty peaks of Juyun cursed lives an adeptus, the exact location hidden somewhere in the ocean of cloud, all the Liyue herb gatherers claim to have seen the realm of the adepti in all its glory revealed before their very eyes in the clouds. Based on personal experience, I can say that overindulging on certain types of mushrooms can induce visions of similar nature. The terrain here fascinates me. So many of these stone pillars look like they belong in deep underground, not here on top of a mountain. There is supposed to be an underground reservoir here. Part of me wonders if all of the water is drawn out. Perhaps Juyun Kars would find itself back on the ocean floor where it belongs. My travel companion, Zhong Li, is the sternest person I know, but he seems most entertained by this theory. He won't stop laughing. What an odd fellow. Yao Guang Shoal. I've heard that the fog often rolls off the sea onto Yao Guang Shoal, and when it's at its thickest, you can barely see your hand at the end of the outstretched arm. Unfortunately, I didn't make it here in time to see the foggy episode. It's a bit of a shame. There are so many lovely shells on the beach. I wonder how many of them have been there since the Archon War. I strung some of them together to make a necklace, but unfortunately that fisherman from the inn sat on it and broke it. Every last shell, brutally crushed beneath his merciless buttocks. None was spared. Not only that, but because he injured himself on the shards of broken shell, I had to pay his medical bills. A giant conch shell stands on the beach where the Bishui River enters the sea. A kind old lady lives inside. Her family is said to have sailed here on the giant shell, and she spends her time rescuing shipwrecked people who end up drifting near the shore. I think that repurposing the giant shell as a self-propelled boat would make it much easier for her to rescue people from the sea. But after I lost control of my third prototype seashell boat and it blew up, the kind old lady decided she was not going to rescue me from the sea anymore. Guyun Stone Forest. This is the site where the Geo Archon defeated the sea monster. Some of the great stone spears that pierce the ocean floor still tower above the surface of the sea. Though many snapped long ago, the hexagonal stone pillars formed a conglomeration of geoenergy, are quite intriguing to look at. Viewed from above, one gets the impression that they were deliberately arranged in their current form to make specific shape on the ocean surface. Maybe that was the real reason the Geo Archon rained down destruction on the ocean floor with his stone spears. Maybe it was all just a big joke, albeit in extremely poor taste. Zhongli from the Liyue harbor seems extremely knowledgeable on Liyue folklore, but I've never actually seen him come here. I can see the Wangshu Inn in the distance. I'll bet that weirdo I'll meet him there last time is still staring this way now. The flow of the ley lines around here is unique in all of Liyue, much more dynamic, somewhat unstable. It's as if a great relentless power stirs somewhere in the depths of the ocean. Perhaps it is the defeated sea monster still writhing on the ocean floor. The end. And so that is it for tonight. We have read 3 stories. If you have missed any of 3 stories, please rewatch the archive, as I will not be reading them again in the future. I hope everybody enjoyed tonight's reading session. That is all for today. Thank you very much for watching. I forgot what's my schedule for tomorrow. What day is today? Today is a Wednesday. Tomorrow is my off day. And on Friday, I'm not sure what game I'll be playing. Maybe Genshin Impact, maybe a different kind of game. Yeah, tomorrow is my off day. I forgot. And so I had a very fun time reading stories. If you have any feedback about the stories, let me know on Twitter. If not, I'll just keep reading them in this way. And so that's all for today. それでは今日はありがとうございました。おやすみなさい。おつゆめ。バイバイ。Till the next time of Genshin Impact Bedtime Stories.